This is brutal power wrapped in an elegant machine.
So once you've finished all of your expenses for the month and you've input all of your bills and checked all your recharges from this this transaction screen, again, just a reminder, you can actually go through and check against all the horse costs over the period by using these filters up here. There'll normally be a lot of data in here, which is why it takes a little while. You can see what's been spent. You can check via supplier, or the item, or the description, as well as filtering by lowest to highest in each column. So once you've checked all that off and you're comfortable with all the costs in there, you then go into your Create Statement wizard, which is this button here. You then select the period. We'll just do from the 1st of August to the 12th of September. Most of the time it goes in monthly billings, but for this example we'll just do the whole lot. And then what happens is it'll take you through this this 11-step process, which will help you make sure that you capture all the costs that have been captured during the month, or try to be captured during the month. So in this first one, this first step is incomplete tasks. We only bill out if something has been complete. So what you can see here is there's all of these procedures here that haven't been completed. If you know they have been completed, you can simply mark them all complete. Because these two were done together, you can choose to do one or you can choose to do both. And then you can choose the date of the request, or you can adjust the date as you need to. Once you click that, it'll mark them as complete. And then you can move on to transport, so you can see any movements or floating that haven't been completed. So you can see these two and you can confirm that they were complete. So once those two are done, you then move on to the next step, which is daily charges. So what this is telling us is that these horses don't have a complete location and status, and therefore they can't be charged out. So this system gives you an opportunity to fix this here before you get to your billing. So we can say he was 10 foot tall, was at Sevenoaks adjusting. So it'll pick up that $60 over that period. This one doesn't have a status, so you can adjust that. And this is telling you there's no day rate set for that. So in that case, we simply click add a day rate. And it might be that you don't charge, but if you do, you can put in your rates. Receivable account. And then once you do that, the system will also remember that for next time. So any horse that's at Kembla Grange and adjusting will have the day rate applied for that. So we'll just clean this one up as well. Eagle Farm. So that's your location and status. You then move across to daily charges. So this one here is talking about adjustment. Should be 45. So now it's picked up all the horses that have a location and status and a daily charge. You can then go to the next step. What this is saying here is that the ownership, there is no ownership that's 100%. So sometimes when we import horses, they won't have a full ownership. However, once they're in and you're using finance, we require that to be 100%. But often when we first start, we may not have a full idea of all the owners. So this is just basically picking that up to make sure that every owner is in there. And it'll pick it up from the start of the period. Now that can be updated. So now they've all been updated, you move on to the next one. So missing fields is where there are these sections here unassigned that that need to be allocated, so that these items can be sent to zero and invoiced out. Sometimes it will depend on the charge. So in this case, we have a charge to these two horses. The supplier is unassigned, so in this case we just need to, there's no cost, so there's no accounts payable in this one, but there is a sale. All the accounts make sense, but we just need to assign that to I don't know, we just need to assign that to internal or the farrier or whoever does it. So that's done. Those two have moved out now. This one here, you can see that it was a task that was created for boost procedure. It doesn't have any cost, any tax rates, and no sale price. So in this case, it would be something that was done during the month that hadn't had a rule associated with it. So you can go through the whole month, add your cost in there, add your task in there, and then assign the cost at the end of the month. So we'll just do that here. We'll just call it internal boost. $15. That's updated that, all of those. Then we look at these other ones. Again, these don't have any costs associated with it, so we'll just go and edit that. Again, this one is no cost, so we just update that. Oops. Floating recoverable. Going back the other way. And then this one is actually an external supplier, and thus we need to have an account payable and a tax rate associated with that. And then we can also create a bill here that might say 150 is the cost, it's farrier expenses, the account code, and then that means all costs are now accounted for. Then move on to next. This is where basically all of the expenses are now calculated. You can use this to this button here to approve it. So basically you can go through all of these costs, check them off. Again, like the transaction list, you can filter by all of these different columns. You can also go through this way and look at individual horses. So, and then if you wanted to add notes to that horse, you can add note here, which will appear on the cover page or appear on the invoice of that horse. And then that changes to green once there's a note there. The other thing you can do with most of these screens is export to CSV. So if you want to just basically export all that data and have a look at all the information in that context, you can. And then you can obviously do all your filtering and everything through here. Or you can also export it as a PDF. So this will just give you the owners, all the expenses there, the owners, all the expenses again. So you can print that off and mark all the expenses off. And then once you're comfortable with all the expenses, you just need to make sure that you choose all of them and approve all of them. So once they're all approved, you then move on to the next step, which is reversals. Reversals are generally when you, more so for trainers who want to, who own part of the horse themselves and want to reverse those accounts. So often it would just be, you basically select the account, select the horse, or if you have a couple of horses, I go here. You can choose by total amount, or you can choose by horse and reverse individual horses. And once you've done that, you then put it to the account that you set, trainer's own account, and then next. And that'll basically reverse that charge. The next phase is the next step is discounts. So in here, this is a discount where we've provided a 10% discount on the training fees when that horse has been in training at Eagle Farm, and as well as an overall discount of 5%, which is set up in this owner's account. If you wanted to give an ad hoc discount, you can do that through here also, just by clicking edit, adding the discount here, making sure it's saved, and then making sure that that's ticked to include. So if you've created a discount in here and you don't want to give it, you can always untick it. Sorry, yeah, there. So once you've checked out all of the discounts and you're comfortable, move to the next step. Then you can see all of the credit notes in here. You can edit them if you need to. And then you move on to the last step, which is basically your statement creation. So this is kind of the last step before you create all of your statements and send them to your owners, as well as sync to Xero. And you'll be able to basically go through these, have a look at the statements as a draft, see what they come out at, see the discounts that are applied, make sure that it all makes sense. And once you're comfortable with those, you can always filter these if you want to, and if you have particular owners that you want to search for and make sure that their accounts are right, you can enter the the search button there. I'll come up with that for you to view. So once you're comfortable with all the statements, you then move on to the next phase, which is where you actually create all your owner statements. This system then processes all of that. Takes a little bit of time. And once that's complete, slowly, you then have all your statements created. You can then add a note to those statements if you want, which will then sit on the cover sheet of your invoice or your statements. Then once you're comfortable to send, you can also export to CSV, but once you're comfortable to send them, make sure you check all of those. If you have someone you don't want to send it to, you can simply uncheck it. It will only send to the ones that you've checked. You then click email. A couple of last warnings just to make sure. And then all of these now are starting to be processed and sent out. This can take a little while because often you'll be sending out many invoices, and then you basically click to next, and this is where you can either finish and not sync, or you can finish and sync to 0. So we'll send everything to 0. So that's just syncing now. And you can see in here all of the different statements, the due date, the amount, the status of it, was sent, created. You can see the one here that was reversed, it's marked as paid. You can see this one here, which we created and didn't want to send, it didn't send. This one here was a separate invoice, a standalone invoice that was created. If you want to send that out, you can send that email by clicking the email icon. And so all of these accounts will sit in here. They'll also sit all the costs that are associated with each of the owners. You can also filter through and have a look here, and it'll give you the status, all invoiced, credit note applied, and their total amount, as well as seeing it in here as well against the account. So in here you can see the statement sent. There was a single invoice and another invoice, so the balance is here. You can see the status there, and then you can see any credits that were created. So back to finance. Now if we take a look at 0, refresh your screen, you'll see now that all those invoices have now gone into here, and there's now, so they're all there, all your owners. The invoices are done by horse, but they're basically paid in full once the payments come through and are reconciled. And you can also see the bills are here. So bills for the transport company and the farrier sit in here, and so everything syncs down from Prism to 0 for accounts reconciliation and accounts payable management.